Welcome to Numbers Don't Lie, Marketing Insights for Accountants. I'm Brad Pinzer.
And I'm Janelle Sikora. Welcome. How are you, Brad?
I'm doing awesome. And you? You
I
hunkering down over there?
I am doing okay. So
Yeah.
it is Hurricane Day here in the Tampa Bay
hmm
area, and it's a little crazy. But we're going to be dropping this episode tomorrow. And yeah, I had a couple of things I wanted to talk about with you today. So kind of unplanned, bringing a couple topics on you. One of them,
Okay.
and this is probably the shorter topic, but since it is relevant and since it is literally 3 feet from me outside my window, Hurricane Milton. And
hmm
did you ever see Office Space?
I saw like parts of it, not the whole thing. That's with Jennifer Aniston?
Oh, I can't
Or
remember
is
if
it
she was in
that?
it. I just remember. Do you remember the guy with the red stapler, Milton?
No, sorry. I'm terrible. That's not going to help you.
So
But I'll pretend I do.
yeah, so I've been seeing all of this stuff about you should get a red stapler, put it outside your door for good luck, all this good stuff. And I kept thinking, what the heck is this all about with the red stapler? And my husband mentioned it to me this morning. He's like, well, don't you remember in Office Space, Milton and his red stapler? Now I get it. But anyhow, it is scary because Tampa hasn't had a direct hit in over 100 years. And there are people who are born
hmm
and raised here that are in panic, but we're doing everything that we can. We have people coming to our house to evacuate, and we're not in a flood zone, but I am concerned about the wind. But, one of the things that really made me think of is that today is October 9th, and we are just days away from a major deadline, major extension tax deadline for accountants. And, as long as I've been working with CPAs and accounting firms, this is a time of year where they really hunker down. It's kind of like your mini tax season. It's like right before April 15th, it's the same way. Right before October 15th, it's kind of a slightly scaled back version of that in some cases. But you know what this whole hurricane made me realize is that we can so easily get sucked in to our daily work, and that is our world, and we get busy and we get stressed, and that's very typical this time of year for accountants. But sometimes things come along that are outside our control, and it pulls us away and kind of pulls us back to realizing what's really important out there. And so it's kind of interesting to think about that. I mean, there's nothing good about this hurricane whatsoever, but at the same time, it does change your perspective a little bit, right? Like I know this afternoon, we're going to be welcoming a whole lot of people into our house and trying to find places for everyone to sleep. And that's my focus, where normally on a Wednesday afternoon, I would be like, eyeball deep in work. So it's just kind of interesting. I guess the message there would be, for these accountants who, the 15th is right around the corner, take a breath. That is not that is not the end of the world. And there are things that are more important in your life that, sometimes you just have to take a breath and get some perspective. Unfortunately, a hurricane should not cause us to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I, for me, I think I just want to figure out how do we stop that whole cycle though, right? Like, isn't
Yeah.
there a way to like why does it have to be like that?
Hmm.
This whole kind of like where you go so crazy for this period of time
Well,
beforehand, and it's really affects your entire life, you personally, mentally, also your relationships, and
hmm
everything. It's like it's
yeah.
just
That cycle is hard to stop though, because if you think about it, I know that like most of the accountants we work with, no one loves that cycle. No one loves that crunch. So what they do to avoid it is, two things. One is they put internal deadlines in place and they get their systems and processes as efficient as possible to get things done a few days before that. And then the other thing that they do is they train their clients to say, look, if you don't have all your stuff into us by such and such date, sorry. Now, there are a lot of firms, though, that are hesitant to do that for, a variety of reasons. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, the client is they don't feel that pain. And so the thought is, well, I'm just going to get my stuff in when I want to get it in. And you've got this constant chase from the accountant side trying to get all these last questions answered, all these last documents in. And that just kind of perpetuates every year. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that a lot of that is drive what has driven, besides that and price pressure, because they're doing a lot of work and undergoing a lot of stress for very little money when it comes to these commodity services. A lot of this has driven that transformation to accountants saying, you know what, I don't like this. I don't like, the majority of my income happening these 2 times a year. And I want to even out those peaks and valleys and get people on a monthly subscription, for lack of a better term, and be able to provide some more regular and proactive and strategic services. And that's really the best way out of that, I think.
And I think you can thank our generation. I think ours, and then even the younger ones, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't have to be this way. We don't feel it needs to be this way, and a lot of us, a lot of firms out there are doing something about it. There's others that are still stuck in that cycle,
Mm-hmm.
but at least the change is happening.
Yeah, it is for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But there's something bigger that I wanted to talk about today that I think would be really helpful for our listeners.
Okay, what is
Okay,
it?
so Brad, the number one question that we probably get is, how do we get more leads? More leads, more leads, more leads. So I wanted to
Hmm.
talk about that for a few minutes because, having the backgrounds that we do, yours is extremely technical. Mine is sales and writing. And then together, both of us are absolute proponents of messaging is everything. The way that I think we answer that question, and this is where I really wanted to kind of get into a discussion about where most accounting firms are missing the point of getting more leads. And I think that when people think about getting new leads, what they're missing, especially and what we see every day is missing in accounting firms, is what are you doing to optimize the stuff that's already coming to you that you aren't even paying attention to,
Hmm. That's exactly right.
right? And
Yeah,
it's
I
things
mean,
like,
that's. Go ahead.
no,
Yeah,
it's
go ahead.
it's it's understanding how a sales funnel works, right? And a sales funnel, for someone who doesn't know what that term is, because they're accountants and not salespeople and marketers, I get it. A sales funnel is that, if you picture a funnel, the very top of the funnel is where your leads come into. And then your job is to nurture those leads all the way to close at the bottom of the funnel. So, you know, where we hear from accountants about where do I get more leads, they're really focused on that top of the funnel. What they're missing is there's a lot of opportunity to pull people into the sales process, pull people into conversations in their firms that they're completely missing. So, I know that you and I preach this all the time and we focus on this every day, is before we think about going out and capturing new leads, because that can be expensive, let's talk about the leads that are already sitting on your doorstep that you can optimize, right? And nurture. And I don't know very many accounting firms that really understand that nurture process. And I think part of it is, having come from a background where I sold software to accounting firms, many of them have practice management softwares in place that are practice management softwares. They're for invoicing, they're for managing client conversations, client documents, client workflows. That doesn't do anything to help nurture the people who are not clients yet, but they've entered into conversations with you.
Yeah, I think there's so much money still on the table with what you already have,
Yeah.
and I think I think the problem is that I'm trying to think of how to say it. It's basically you're just not ready, right? Like most firms just aren't ready to go after new business using ads and the methods that are available to us. And there's so much more that needs to be done on your existing system and your processes for maximizing all the opportunities that are right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the biggest mistake that I'm seeing is people, you know, I think really what it is you're stuck in not really knowing what you need to do with your existing opportunities to maximize that. And so the easy way out is, oh, we'll just go after new stuff,
Mm-hmm.
or you feel like this pressure from the rest of the world that that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's very strong pressure. And I think that's the biggest problem. So then you end up, what ends up happening is you go after, new business, you do ads or whatever, and they don't work.
Yeah.
And then you're like, just feeling like, oh, advertising doesn't work for me. It's a waste of money and all that kind of stuff. And it is if you don't have the systems in place to really do it and if you're not ready for it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what ends up happening is that, you know, as an accounting firm, if you go to an agency and you say, I want to do ads, a lot of times the agency will go ahead and help you do that because that's what they do. Um, and, they're in business, right, to make
Mm-hmm.
money and they want to help you. And I think a lot of times, generally, they do want to help you and they're just trying to help you. And it's not just like they're trying to take your money, but that's kind of like the dynamic of what happens. And so they go through that process and then, you
Mm-hmm.
might have a little success. And it also depends a little bit on the time of the year that you're doing it and how hungry, um, the market is, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's closer to, tax time deadlines and things like that, you're going to probably have more, maybe luck. I would
The
call it
leads you
more
get
luck
then are
than
going to be the ones you don't want, right? Most firms that we work with don't want those stray tax returns at all because
right.
they're very painful to deal with. But I
Right.
think
So that's kind of like, yeah, let me just finish. So like that's the dynamic of what, happens, right?
yeah.
So then, you have to, push that aside and there's so much more stuff that you need to do to set up your systems. It could take you a whole year
Mm-hmm.
to go through all the different pieces of a system that you have to have in place to really, take care of the existing opportunities that are in front of you. So,
You brought up a really good point. You said it could take you a whole year. The problem that I think a lot of firm owners don't realize is they think, well, if I run some ads, I'm going to get some leads, boom, done, great, immediate gratification, because we live in an era of immediate gratification, right? Wrong. That isn't how it works. If you do it properly, what's the old Japanese proverb? What's the best time to plant an oak tree? 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. It
mhm.
takes time if you want to develop the right leads. But I wanted to cover a couple of things that people can do like right away. So, three things. Number one, sit down and identify who is that ideal client. Who do you want to walk through your door? And don't say everybody, don't say every small business owner because that's way too broad. Then you look like a generalist. For marketing purposes, you need to niche that down a little bit. And then along that same vein, you need to really understand what the problems are that this ideal client are trying to solve. Understand that because you can't go out there and try and sell someone quote unquote advisory services because advisory services, those two words mean nothing to business owners. We're business owners. They mean nothing to us. You have to understand your ideal client so well and understand their problems that what you're selling them as an accountant is the answer and the results that you're going to get them to their problems. That's where it starts. But then number two, the two biggest holes that we see repeatedly in accounting firms' buckets are number one, no follow up, no automation for follow up in place for proposals that get sent out. A proposal gets sent out. We had a firm a little while back that's like, yep, we sent out a proposal. We follow up in a couple weeks. No, time kills deals. You can't do that. You have to have a really strong follow up automation in place. That's one. And another one is, like you said earlier, look at what you already have in house. The easiest, as a professional salesperson for this many years, when I had a quota to hit, the first thing what you're going to do is always look for that least path of resistance, right? What's the easiest way for me to turn revenue around? Well, the easiest way is what can I upsell? So look for the low hanging fruit. Take some time to look through your entire client list. Look at all of those people who are only paying you for commodity work that you could get on some sort of a monthly subscription if you had your messaging right and if you had the right approach in place. And look for those people who are maybe that next level up. They're not at your highest level of service, but they should be. The easiest revenue push you can have in a firm is to upsell your existing client base. And I see very, very few accounting firms really focused on that. They know, every single firm we talk to will ask, do you have a subset of clients that you know should be on, paying you more money for monthly services, but they're only paying you for X? Never one time have I heard someone say, no, not at all. They all do. That's the number one place to focus. And then the second place to focus is every time you send a proposal out the door, which follow-up process. If you plug those two buckets, I guarantee you will see a boost in revenue to start with. And if you maximize that first, then we can talk about some other areas to optimize even before you think about bringing in new clients. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the problem is that a lot of it in theory sounds great. And I think that just people struggle with really figuring out how to do all of that, right?
Sure.
And so that's why they're like, oh, I don't know how to do this, so I'm going to just go do this, and like the ad thing, right? So, 100%. I mean, everyone, all kinds of experts out there say, the easiest person to sell is, somebody you're already working with, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of just common sense information out there that I think most people know about, and it's just how do I do it though? Like, how do I put the systems in place? How do I attack each specific area? For instance, you mentioned the proposal part, right? There's some companies that still just do handwritten proposals, and they have it a manual process. I mean, I think there's going to be some level of manual process to it, but as much of it that you can automate as possible, so that like when a proposal's been opened and when it's been read and when it's been signed and like all that stuff, having an automated process in place just saves you so much time and allows you to automate follow-up sequences and other types of nurturing campaigns to push that process along. And that's just one example of how you can use automation to help your business. And so you want to take that and apply it to all other aspects of your business, like whether it's getting feedback and getting reviews and things like that. All these like little pieces, they add up to a bigger system for your business. And so you want to attack each one of those. Each month you want to have like a plan where you attack each one of those types of things, and you come up with a plan for that's complete and thorough, and you have it in place, and then you move on to the next thing. And you just, at the end of, let's say, whatever time period, some can move quicker than others, but let's just say you gave yourself a year to like attack all of these things and build the system to get the most out of what you already have created. And then you have this incredible powerful system, and then you make it your own, and then you could be ready for doing ads and in a much better place with a much higher probability of success.
100% agree. I think that once you have fixed all of the potential holes in your leaky bucket, then you can think about bringing in new ads, or doing ads, or bringing in new leads is what I meant to say. But the most important thing is stand back and plug those holes, and then think about how are people getting to me? Are they getting to me? Do I have a referral strategy in place? How am I making it easy for people to step into that first step of my sales process, or a conversation in most cases? Do you have a chat widget on your website? And I know that scares a lot of accounting firms, but let me tell you, the chat widget essentially is a vehicle to pull people into a text conversation. Why do you want to do that? Because Gen Z business owners are where the majority of business owners are going to be Gen Z. I think I saw a statistic that 75% of Gen Z has or will start a business, and they text. They live and die by text. So if you've got a chat widget, if you've got a two-way texting number, then what you're going to be able to do is if they reach out to you and you aren't available for whatever reason to respond, that's okay. You still have their number to be able to get back to them. So it just invites them into a conversation. I mean, yes, it's better if you are able to respond right away through, chat widget on your website, but those things can be automated too. But just making it easy for people to reach out and talk to you without, sometimes it's just too big of a leap for even millennials to pick up, like to pick up the phone and call because they aren't sure what to say. A lot of them prefer just to have that text conversation first. And the other thing they prefer to do is consume content. So when potential consumers are vetting out a firm that they're considering doing business with, whether it's, whether they've been referred to them or found you on Google, they're going to scout you out. They're going to look at your website. They're going to look through your content. They're going to check out your social media, check out your reviews for sure. And so if you have all of those things buttoned up, that's another big leaky area that we see, because those are prospecting deterrents. But if you have all of those things buttoned up, you're going to welcome a lot more people into the process. So those would be the things that I would really focus on optimizing before even thinking about how am I going to get new leads into my business.
Yeah, but let me give a bigger picture to that, because you're really talking about some like technical implementations like chat widgets and stuff like that. But the real big idea behind that is you want to facilitate as many conversations as possible, because it is through the conversations that you have that you're going to be able to, show your expertise and to really sell, right? Like that's where you're going to be able to sell, right? So the more that you can create these opportunities for yourself and for the customers and prospects that you want to impact, the better chance you have of being able to, sell them on a service that they need that you can deliver. And it's kind of like you might have, if you're not already doing this, or if you see people that are doing this, where you have in your in your service like unlimited contact, unlimited conversations. Like, to me, when I first kind of thought about this, I was like, oh, that's scary. I wouldn't want to do that, right? But then it's almost counterintuitive, and I love counterintuitive things and learning about them.
Yeah.
Is you open that up, people aren't going to call you every single day, right? And if they abuse it, you could just fire them. I mean, you know what I mean?
Right,
like
right.
That's not somebody you want to work with. But it's just not going to happen like that. It's not like they're going to, but when they do call you, you do have those conversations. It's because they have something that, there's some kind of problem. There's something that you can help them with. And, as long as your agreements and stuff are structured so that you have very specific boundaries, and then you can say, well, Mr. Customer, this is out of scope, but we could certainly help you with that. And then, it's another extra, $500 or whatever, here and there. And then all that stuff, all those $500 add up times, 100 clients or whatever. And, that's kind of the concept of how you can, generate more revenue and profit from your existing clients. And then also kind of get the relationship started with new prospects and people that don't quite know you yet. And that's why content is so important, because that's how they get to kind of get introduced to you and kind of like learn a little bit, the whole awareness part of things. But then from there, that has to connect to a way for them to connect with you.
Right.
And it's all fits together. And then you have to have a whole system where that comes in, like whether it's the text messaging, whether it's a chat widget on your website, or a phone call, text messaging, all these different channels, you want them all to come into one central place where you can manage all of that stuff. And then when you have a system and you're using automation, like those things, all of those things that come in can trigger these nurturing campaigns and automations and all that kind of stuff. So those are that's the kind of system that you need to have in place in order to really leverage, the opportunities that you have, and, like I said, maximize, your existing clients, and any prospect or anybody that expresses any level of interest, whether it's just, looking at a piece of content, or, somehow interacting with your business. That's what you need to be successful.
100% agree. I would add one thing, and that I think what's really, really important for people to remember, accountants, is if small business owners are your ideal client, or some niche within that large group we call small business owners, it's really important to remember how people make decisions to do business with you too, because that plays into it. And people make decisions based on emotion, and then they justify it with logic the vast, vast majority of the time. So one of the things that I think is also really, really important as accountants are thinking about how to optimize opportunities that are really on their doorstep is when you're having conversations, whether those are, voice conversations, text conversations, email conversations, whatever they are, really keep in mind and focus on the emotion of your prospect. What problem do they have, and how is that making them feel? Because if you look at your solution through that lens, you're going to be able to close a lot more business when you understand and when you focus on, and you are reminding them of that emotion, and how you can kind of take them from point A, maybe where they're confused or overwhelmed or terrified, into Z, A to Z, you're the guide, right? And where you can bring them to a sense of peace of mind, or confidence. And I think you really want to stay focused on that emotion when you're having those conversations, with all of the opportunity that's literally right on your plate. Again, that also applies to bringing in, new leads, any sales conversation, but just really focusing on buttoning up and optimizing all of the opportunity that's on your plate. That's something very important. Take all the tech talk out of it, and really keep emotion at the forefront.
Yeah, what helps me with all that kind of stuff is like, it's just like being a human being, right? Like just
Exactly.
being just it doesn't matter like what it is you do and all that kind of stuff, and necessarily your words don't really even matter as much as your uh, intention behind what you're saying, like, and how your tone and how you say things.
Yeah.
And if somebody comes to you with a problem, and you have like some, you don't want to fake it, but like you should have some sincere level of empathy, right? Like I have it naturally,
100%.
like it just comes naturally to me. Some people are like my wife Amy, like she has like maybe zero empathy. So we're like total opposites. But I think if you come from it from that perspective, and then
Yeah.
it's like, um at the end of the day, people are gonna choose who they like, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
And
for the most part,
that's such a great, great, important point. And I think this is what makes accountants nervous about having those sales conversations. It is just a conversation. It's just showing empathy and understanding that, just showing understanding about the problems and the pain points that the person you're talking to is going through, and then showing them the results that you can get. That's all it is. But you're right. It's just being a human being, having the conversation, and then offering solutions and results. And if you're talking to someone who isn't the right fit, then be honest and move on. Cut your losses. Don't waste your time or theirs. But I think
mhm.
that you bring up a really good point. It's all about just being a human being, and realizing that people buy from others who that they know and they trust, and they actually like working with.
Yeah, and also just to your point, like sometimes they're not a right fit then,
Mhm.
like at that moment, but if you're helping them and like genuinely trying to help them do the right thing for their business at that moment, And perhaps it's even sending them off to somebody else for a bit. Doesn't mean they can't come back to you when they are a good fit, because they remember that time that you helped them,
Absolutely.
Happens to
But
me.
that brings up
Happens to
another
us.
great point, which is as you are talking to people and maybe for whatever reason they don't move forward with you, if you're working with an existing lead or a new lead, don't just let that person go. Keep them on some sort of a nurture campaign where you're regularly in their inbox, sharing value with them, not selling them on anything, but just showing up and sharing value. Because even if today isn't the right time, tomorrow might be, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 3 years from now. Years ago when I was selling, I had a prospect in my crosshairs that I knew I needed to do business with. And I kept at it, just kept stayed in touch. And when I had something of value to share, I shared it. Eventually there was a huge client and they signed and did business with me. If I hadn't been top of mind to them, they would have gone with a competitor because I have plenty of competitors. So I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind. Nurturing those leads and, along the path, you will be surprised how many people will, at the right time, if you're the one in their inbox, if you're the one showing up with value, they will do business with you. But it's important to have those
That,
processes in place where you are nurturing those leads over the long term.
right. I mean, that's a perfect point, because like that one person that I was just talking about, like if what if it's 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later, like you're just checking in. You had a note about them and like whatever it was that they were working on in their business, and you just did a little follow up. Hey Janelle, how's that thing going with your business or whatever that you guys talked about? Just a quick little email. Boom,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. You know, with your signature and everything like that. That one thing right there, that first of all is being human, and that's genuinely wanting to know, and you just never know what that kind of stuff leads to. But you can't do that if you don't have a system in place. Like you're
Right.
just going to forget. You're just not going to be able to. You're going to get all caught up in whatever else you got going on, and that's a perfect example of just leaving money on the table.
Yeah,
And like you
exactly.
said, that could end up being your biggest client
Yep.
potentially. You just don't know,
It's one I'll
right?
never forget for sure. The one that I've got in mind. It was a huge
Right.
client. So yeah, that's just really, really important. And you also never know when, like when employees move on. And if you've got that great relationship where you're constantly nurturing them and, the owner of that small business, leaves or starts another business, or a key employee there leaves and goes to another business, and you have that relationship and there's an opportunity that comes up, you're going to be the person that they think about. And that's the type of thing that takes years, right? You've got to commit to it. You've got to be out there with your thought leadership and, nurturing those relationships for the long term. I think a lot of times, accounting firms will say, well, I tried, I did this for 3 months or 6 months, or I sent a mailer out, or my favorite one was a firm probably 3 or 4 years ago who's like, well, we tried marketing, it didn't work. And I said, what do you mean? Well, we sent a postcard out to, however many businesses around our area, and we got nothing from it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't
Right.
even know where to start with that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But anyhow, things take time, and that's the point. But I think, for today, to wrap up, I really wanted people to be able to come away from this episode with some inspiration and some ideas for, I don't necessarily have to go and look for new leads. Let's just focus on what's in my house, right? Let's get our house in order first and figure out what we've got here that we can optimize and grow our revenue with existing clients and people who are on our doorstep first. That's going to be a huge hit. When you've got all of that in place, then you can think about how you're going to generate new leads, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you can't help somebody that already knows you, and sell them something a little bit more that they need, right? Because you have a relationship already. Like, how do you think you're going to be able to do that with somebody that's a stranger? Like,
Very good point. Yep.
you know, so
Well, I hope everyone was able to take some good points away from this today. And I will talk to everybody on the other side of Hurricane Milton. That's it for
We'll let you
today.
know.
Thanks for joining
Yep.
us.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.